basically those people have bought access to my artwork first. They've said, we want to support you enough that we're going to pay money before work even materializes. Like, go listen to it here.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
How should we start? Like, my plan is for this to take like 45 minutes ish. I wrote down several questions. I have another device over here that you cannot see. And it would, but we could also dive right into Patreon. But like, do you have a preference?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can just explain the concept, and then we can
do it.
Yeah, because I feel like that's kind of what this is about, and we don't have to, we can go for that. So
yeah, let's play laser focused. You go.
Okay, all right. So basically, Patreon came around in like 2013, something like that, and it was a platform where people, if you're not familiar with it, it's a platform where people can support you in your creative efforts. And it's for all creatives, right? If you have a podcast, basically to continue to produce your content, and so, people like your podcast and they say, okay, we want you to continue producing your content, and we don't want you to have to, rely on your 9-to-5 or whatever. And, they can support you. And if you get enough support, you can basically, whatever creative endeavor you're doing, like your podcast, you can say, okay, I'm going to do this full time now because I have enough support from my Patreon group or whatever it is. But it's for any creative. And when it first came around, I probably got privy to it maybe around 2015, 16. And I was listening to an interview, and Ella Smallwood, who is a painter from Canada, was making a decent amount of money, like $300, $400 a month was coming in. And basically, it was people just saying, we want you to continue your work. We want you to, we want to support you in your work. And, what her patrons got, I believe, was like, if you like Patreon is divided up into tiers. Like, you can not patronize. You can donate, a certain amount of money, depending upon tier, right? So like if you, for a visual artist, like let's say you give the visual artist $5 a month, they might send you a sketch out of their sketchbook or something. And then depending upon what tier you donate to, those rewards get higher and higher and higher. You could donate $25 a month if that was a tier, and maybe they'd send you a signed print or something like that. So basically it was like, we give you the support, and then the artist provides something, and it's completely up to the artist, right? And this was very obviously captivating to me because I want to spend more time making my work and less time at a 9-to-5 or working another job aside from my artwork. And I started to do a little bit of research, and different people, different artists using it different ways. Like, they don't really give you a structure that you have to follow. It's basically like, you're going to present yourself as making a thing, and then you're going to say, if you support me, this is what I will provide you. And then it's, it's up to your supporters, it's up to the people that find you if they want to support you or not. And this all sounded awesome to me, except that, when I started to think about these artists that were, basically, receiving support, and then say at the end of the month, they were, sending all of their patrons sketches out of their sketchbooks, or they were sending everybody, prints. And it kind of became a monthly thing where they either had to give pages out of their sketchbook, or they had to quickly make a bunch of small paintings, or they had to produce a print every single month to kind of satisfy this thing. And in my head I was going, well, I don't want to donate pages from my sketchbook because my sketchbook is important to me. That's where I keep all my ideas, right? I don't want to run to the end of the month and all of a sudden get smashed knowing that I have to, spend 3 days straight sketching because I owe my patrons.
It would just be another treadmill.
Right, exactly. It's so I didn't want to get caught up in any of that, right? So I kind of started to think about it, and it's like, well, what if I used Patreon as almost a way for my supporters to pay for my original works of art ahead of time. So instead of saying, you're going to support me and I'm going to, and, you know, I'm some high and mighty artist and you know, if you want to buy my paintings, you're going to have to, you know, give me the $800,000, $2,000, whatever. I said, okay, so what if we just said, you know, if you donate $5 to me, I keep track of that and it goes toward an original work of art. You know, like instead of saying like, I'm going to give you, I don't want to say my trash because like I would totally die for a page out of some of those other artists' sketchbooks. I get that. But like that wasn't my position, right? Like nobody was caring about what was in my sketchbook or me making little drawings. But there were some people that were interested in my paintings. There were some people that were interested in my work. So, you know, and work is expensive and it has to be. So in my head, it was, okay, so basically Patreon has already set up the platform to, you know, basically have a pay it forward way of purchasing works of fine art. You know, so the way that I continued to think about this, it's like, okay, so I have, you know, different tiers in my Patreon, let's say 5, 10, 25 bucks, right? And every single month, this money comes in, and every single month I post all my new work to my Patreon account before I post it anywhere else. So not only are my patrons giving me money toward future artworks, but they also are the people that get first access to my work. So like I don't post it on Instagram, I don't post it on my website. Like first it goes to that Patreon account because I basically those people have bought access to my artwork first. They've said, we want to support you enough that we're going to pay money before work even materializes. So when work materializes, they get first dibs at it, right? And that goes, you know, that goes for things I make. And you know, you can kind of build in other you can build in other rewards into a Patreon account. And I suggest if you're interested in Patreon, just, you know, Google it, look it up, and it'll give you the rundown. But like, you know, I'll build in other physical rewards where like I don't do commissions anymore. I just don't. But my patrons for my Patreon account still have access to commit. Like I will still talk to them about commissions. So basically what I'm doing is like Patreon is a way to almost crowdfund, right? An artist practice. I wanted to change that a little bit too, where I said, no, I'm not looking for 1,000 people to give me $1 or $5. I'm looking for 50 people, 30 people, 40 people, whatever, that are really interested in what I'm doing. And then I'm going to basically start to, you know, position them as my collectors, you know, and they are, right? Like they're the first people that have access to my work. They're the people that in the past have said, you know, we like your work, we like what you're doing, and we are willing to, you know, pay it forward so you can keep doing what you're doing. And you know, instead of trying to like juggle, you know, a bunch of other things to keep your art practice afloat. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah, okay. It's a perfect thing. I used it for one of my projects, but of course in a way more traditional, Patreon traditional way. So I think this, did it influence your art pricing in any way?
It didn't, but also like my art pricing isn't terribly high. You know, like I'll sell paintings from anywhere from like $300 to I guess my, you know, like a couple thousand, but the couple $1,000 paintings don't happen very often. So I didn't have to. No, not at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with Patreon, people can pay as much as they want. And and usually you don't, I mean, Patreon keeps track of it, but usually the creators don't. So in your case, there's an additional benefit to a person, to a patron of yours, being able to rely on, well, let's say they have a lot of money. Because I have a friend, he works on a video game, and he's crowdfunded through Kickstarter, but also through Patreon. And there is, I think, he gets over 1,000 each month. at least the last time I checked, which was over a year ago. But that was mostly due to one person who really wanted this project to happen. And I think that guy donates like 600 or something each month. And so, of course, that sounds crazy. But let's say you do create pieces of art that have a value around whatever, 3,000 to 5,000, the larger works, let's say. Then, you know, a collector could do that. They could say, well, I have this money every month. If I do this now, and after half a year, I get one of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. And another thing is, I know, like, for an established artist, this might not be so important, you know, but, and it'll still work, but, or at least I believe it will still work. But like for folks that are up and coming or just getting started or kind of in the early stages of their art career, you know, you're basically saying, you know, I'm new, and your patron is saying, you know, we trust that you're, you know, going to keep at it, become successful. And it's basically a way to say, you know, I want to get your work early. Like that's what your patrons are saying, you know, which I think is pretty cool, you know, like, and it's not just the financial side of it, but you start to build a rapport with this small group of people that is really championing your work. You know, like it's not just somebody that randomly comes across it on Instagram. It's like this person that you talk to back and forth, and it becomes much more artist collector than, you know, artist collector, you know, supporter artist than, say, just like somebody that's like, oh, that looks cool, I'm gonna grab that up. You know, I don't know. Like I haven't been doing this since I have been in grad school, which I'm about to finish. But I've started to recontact, you know, all the people who have supported me in the past, and like, you know, one by one, they're like, yeah, like sign us up, we're totally in, you know. So yeah.
It is maybe the contemporary version of patronship. You know, I mean, that's how it started.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore. And this might get pretty close depending on your pre-existing visibility. But I also, because actually you mentioned, I think you didn't say galleries, but for example, I collaborate with 2 galleries. And that was while you were talking and explaining the concept, I thought it through, and I don't see a problem there, because ultimately, you know, when they sell something, 50% goes their way, 50% goes my way. Whatever I do with my 50% is really up to me. So it's really easy to deduct whatever was paid already. Because it's also none of my business what the gallery does with their 50%. So I don't see it as a problem. I don't see it as a, you know, since it does not influence the price, who would care? Like, because the fear could be, oh my God, I'm doing something that is unusual. The fine art market is definitely not known for these kinds of experiments. It wants to have a certain stability. But I don't see how this would be a problem. I'm actually curious about talking this through with both galleries.
Yeah. And I mean, the way I haven't had a large show like since, you know, kind of exercising this concept. And the way that I've thought about it is like, okay, so let's say I have to produce a large group of work, or a group of work for a group show, you know, a bunch of work for a group show. And I'm going to say that's fine. Like, but I'm going to tell my gallery, but like, you know, I have a group of people that need the show catalog before anybody else gets to it. You know, and that's just it. And then that even though that the financial things might need some talking out, it's simply like, nope, this group of people like needs access to this work before anybody else does.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like they you know, they would still have to purchase through the gallery, of course, but like it's, you know, they're paying for that privilege. And again, like this is how I'm doing it. The thing is, like, this concept could go any way you wanted, right? And anybody can do it differently. Like, you know, it was kind of just a thing that's like, you know, let me try this. And I really had nothing to lose because like I didn't have an established name. And it worked, you know, and it's continuing to work. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna pursue this, but you know.
Yeah. No, I don't see, because this situation of there being not a preferred, but a specific group of people who get first access, it's nothing unusual.
Right.
And for you to have a dedicated list, I think it should make any gallery be curious about it. Like, what is the concept here? And everything, I mean, just in general in business, whatever you talk about upfront and where both parties know what's going on, I think I wouldn't see why there would be a problem. And in the first place, it's about how, like, you generate visibility, you care about expanding your network.
Yeah. Totally.
Without a gallery, that is essential anyway, and with a gallery, it just helps you. It's
yeah. No, totally. I mean, I think there is and you know, someone recently asked me, like, what happens if Patreon comes down, or like what, you know, things like that, like what, and it's like, well, what we're really talking about here is really just an email list and a monthly subscription. The thing is, Patreon just like set it up for me, so I didn't have to, you know, worry about keeping track of the money and stuff. But like, you could completely do this same thing with someone having a reoccurring Venmo or PayPal to your account and an email list. It's the same thing. So yeah.
And I mean, there are alternatives to Patreon, quite a few. Yeah. I mean, but that is also an important thing, because I know these. It's two siblings. They sit somewhere outside of Seattle, and they are working on a video game for 15 years already, and they reach version 1.0 in around 15 years. So they make a huge thing. And for the first couple of years, they only accepted donations onto their bank account, because they said they didn't want to have a single real customer, because they didn't want to have to deal with the problem. So they made donation-ware. Anyone can download it for free, but they came to this point where they kind of reached their glass ceiling in about how many people would send them money as a bank transfer. And then they have this huge forum with, I think, 60,000 people who participate there. And one of them, it's huge, Dwarf Fortress. It's a huge game in regards to how many people know about it. And then one of them said, well, why don't you use Patreon? And I think in that year, they doubled their income because of that. It's Dwarf Fortress. Dwarf Fortress. You can, on my YouTube channel, on Doubt, just look for Dwarf Fortress.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great, my favorite podcast is funded through Patreon. And the thing is, like, you know, you can be an artist, and then you can also, and be benefiting from it, obviously. But like, I have, you know, 2 or 3 different accounts that I'm a patron for, that I just, you know, like, it's a pretty cool thing. Like, Patreon did all the organizing for you, so you just kind of have to plug in your stuff.
And that's what I wanted to say. Sorry, because now I went onto a tangent. But with Patreon, for those who don't know it, the thing is, you set up tiers, and you say you can define what the rewards are for these tiers. But the thing is, you do not need to offer any specific rewards in this kind of situation, that or strategy that you are proposing, because essentially what you say is, I do the bookkeeping, and I know how much whatever person ever donated. For that person was $37, and for that other person it was $280.
Yeah.
Over whatever, ever since they started, even if they would at one point stop donating, and they would still have this in your virtual bank account.
Correct.
So there's, I mean, that's what I love about the concept. It does not create another treadmill where you have to fulfill. You just do your thing, and people can choose at whatever point, because you will keep creating anyway. But they have the benefit of knowing that they support someone who's potentially struggling. So I think, I don't know, I love this. And they can pay in as much as they want. If they have a lot of money at 1 month, they could say, well, who cares? Let's give Matthew another 500.
Yeah.
They will get it back eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of another thing that a little bit goes beyond that is, Oh shoot, I just had it in my head and now it's gone.
Yeah, it will come back.
It'll come back. Um, but yeah, like oh, that see, like the main point was that the artist continues spending their time working on their actual work instead
Yeah.
of and there's nothing wrong with, you know, working on small things or things to send out every month, but I personally don't want to do that. Like I just want to keep advancing my research, my work, things like that, and this gives me a
Mm.
way to do that where
Yeah.
like and I'm also not interested in keeping my work. You know,
Mm.
like I'm not interested in like building up a big stockpile of my work. It's like, no, I've made this thing. I'm gonna, you know, let me document it, and now like I'm ready to get rid of it. Unless it's going to a show, I'm ready to get rid of it. You know,
Mm.
so it's like, and this is another way to kind of get a set of eyes on it that I know already are interested in what I'm doing. You know, um, so yeah,
Mm.
like it's and again, like it's just a different way of using Patreon that I don't think I invented this either. Like I haven't heard anybody else doing this, but
Mm.
I am sure somebody somewhere is doing this. You know,
Of course, but I also have to say, considering how easy the concept is, I'm a little bit weirded out by the fact that I never heard anyone talk about it. And it
right.
doesn't seem like a concept that anyone would want to keep as a secret. Nevertheless, thank you so much for sharing this,
Yeah.
because the fine art industry, I think, it's well known for people not sharing whatever they know. So
Which
thank
I
you a
mean,
lot.
yeah, you're welcome. Which I do understand that people are territorial and, you know, we live under, you know, a capitalist regime basically, and you have to keep
Mm.
money coming in. Simultaneously though, like better art comes from, you know, people having a knowledge base and then trying to rise above that and chip above that. You know, so like the hope is that somebody takes this concept and gets something way better out of it. You know, like somebody's going to take this and it's like, you know, like we don't have to talk about what's going on with like Reddit in the United States stock market right now, but like you know, like sooner or later somebody's going to figure something out and then it's going
Yeah.
to change the game. You know, and like this isn't going to change the game, but maybe it'll be the seed that somebody
Mm.
takes and you know what I mean? So like I agree. Like knowledge shouldn't be not knowledge like look at I mean to talk about people like that I think this entire audience would be familiar with like look at somebody like you know Nicholas Uribe.
Mm.
You know, like he figured out a way to literally do what he loves to do, share what he loves to do for free. And you know and people are getting paint instruction like pretty good paint if they actually like you know sit there and like think, you know, like it's pretty crazy, you know, like talk
Mm.
about somebody who is just absolutely, you know, like I can't think of somebody who's more considerate with their time, you know, in terms of what other people are getting. So it's just yeah, I think that there is knowledge that people have to pay for. Otherwise, like you wouldn't have art school, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you will pay for expertise, but there's also base knowledge that I think should be accessible, and I think things like this should be accessible.
But as with Nicolas Uribe, I think it was a very long conversation that he had with himself and probably loads of others about what it would mean to go to 250 each. After copying them for a minute, so it's kind of stupid and people are like, I don't like to share. Yeah, I mean, my point with him would be it cannot have been an easy decision to turn from wherever he was on the market.
Yeah.
His market obviously just grew as a consequence to his actions, but to go from his price level to 250, I think he even posted back then, thank you to all gallerists, and he must have had loads of discussions. I don't know that, but it's just my best guess. And that we don't grow up with people discussing these kind of things, but instead
Right.
we end up in a weird niche Instagram live chat. That is very like it says a lot about the state of the industry.
Yeah.
So we really do need these kind of discussions, because although most of us are territorial, we don't benefit from this, at least on this level, because I mean, if anything, then Patreon it works because so many people talked about Patreon. and so many people are on it and don't need to sign up for it anymore. So I don't know. But yeah, it's very weird because you say, of course, with art school, you get a lot of knowledge. And I mean, I'm in Europe, you don't have to pay to study here. So it's a different situation. But nevertheless, on both continents and on all others, they don't teach anything about business. So it's always a weird situation.
I wish I would have known that when I applied to schools, man. I'm in so much debt.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you know, like you said, the art market, you know, everybody is territorial and you have to make money, but like under COVID, under like the continuing like widening of, you know, the wealth gap between classes, like things have to change, you know, like it's they have to change somehow. The art market has to change somehow too, you know, and I'm sure there will always be blue chip galleries that are selling dead art or, you know, cutting edge contemporary art to, you know, big collectors, but like there has to be, you know, options for the rest of us. So and even if we're trying, you know, if we're shooting to be that blue chip artist, you know, that, you know, has people, you know, like purchase our art for, you know, here's a painting for 20K. Holy cow, that's great. I just got to make 10 of those in a year and I'm good. You know, but like if that's the goal, cool. But until then, what are you going to do? You know, like, are you going to work a 9 to 5 and then also, you know, spend 40 hours in your art practice and then, you know, hope that you have a girlfriend, spouse, family, that wife that is okay with these things, you know? So like, and you know, I don't know, like that's always the way I'm kind of thinking about it when I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to navigate continuing to make my work while also having to try to make money.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. We talked now for a little bit over half an hour. We could stop it here. We could go into whatever else, your work, your past. We can also ask for questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, we can wait for questions. While we're waiting, I think something kind of as just a general overview to think about, like if you're an artist trying to navigate, is think about what tools are accessible to you, right? Like very much think about like if are you a person that makes multiples of something, you know, like and like a printmaker. And when I say a printmaker, I don't mean like the, you know, the discipline of printmaking. I mean someone who makes multiples. Like how does that work into something like this or something, you know, like, or are you somebody that makes one thing for 6 months and that's the only thing you make, like that? So you know, like think about how, you know, you're going to go about getting these things in front of people and also trying to find the people who are interested in supporting your work. I was talking to someone around here about this, and where it's just kind of like make a list and put your family on there, you know, like think about the people who, you know, who have supported you in the past, you know, and don't send them an email with your Patreon link. Like, no, like call them, have a conversation. Like, this is what I'm trying to do. Explain the concept. Even if you don't use this concept, like, you know, like you need to find people who are interested in, yes, buying your work, but also like people that are simply interested in thinking about your work and talking about your work, and, you know, in maybe sending a piece of your work to somebody else that might be interested in it. You know, like that's how you gotta get things in front of people. Again, I was having a conversation where I don't get a lot of residency acceptance letters. You know, I've been accepted to like 2 residencies probably out of like the, you know, the 200 that I've applied for. But those applications get my work in front of people that I want to see my work, you know? So like, and again, like this is a completely separate conversation, but it's like, you know, like all of these, you know, like when you apply to a show, to a group show, like, and you don't get it, remember that like being awarded the group show is just part of the benefit of that application, right? Like, think about the tools you have to get your work in front of people, reach out to people. Like, you know, it's all about connections, right? Like we can talk forever about like networking,
Yeah.
and that's what it really comes down to, right? So you got to get the right people. Okay.
Yeah, and in addition, we usually start out with having, I mean, that's why it's beautiful that you mentioned family, because at the beginning, that is what most of us grow up with. There's one or two parent figures, and then it grows from there. But there is a Jerry Saltz. He published an article with, I think it's called like 30 strategies for artists. He released it maybe 2 years ago, and then he released a book since then with the same title. And one of them is, hey, none of us has a strong network at the beginning, but you actually don't need one at the beginning, because if you know one person that buys, let's say, a small piece of yours once a year, or maybe you know 3 or 4 of these, then already stuff is happening. And these people will only do that because they believe in the work, and usually that means they believe in you, and that means it will start circulating. And that is, it's always hard, I think, to change anything from today to tomorrow, but to change your position and, of course, your visibility and network by going into a certain direction over time. Then, I mean, not everything is possible, but a lot is possible.
Yeah, agreed.
And that is why I think, and that, of course, it goes in another direction still, but why social media makes a difference, why something like a newsletter makes a difference. That's also interesting that you compared Patreon to a newsletter, because in a way it does this kind of thing.
It's the same thing.
Exactly. And all of these things are small, very timid shout out options. And if you have none of them, then it might be rather hard. But it might still be possible if you have other strategies. And if you have all of them, it still doesn't mean that anybody will see you. You still have to find the right strategy for each of these platforms.
100%.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, any questions? I think nobody wants to. Oh, well, hooray for 1 kg means Stundenlohn. That, yeah. Oh, I missed all of these things. Well, yeah. If anyone has a question, then please tell us in the comments. So what are you currently working on?
Well, semester starts next week, so I'm teaching a couple of classes. I'm getting my syllabus ready for those classes.
What do you teach?
This semester I teach painting 1. I teach a color workshop, and then I teach a conceptual art workshop. The workshops are both 5 weeks, and painting 1 is the full semester. So
Great.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of getting those things lined up, and I'm trying to work on my thesis work as well, because my thesis show happens in a couple of months, and then and I'm also working on job applications. So, you know, just in case I don't get enough, you know, patrons to get me 6 figures a year. So it's so yeah, we're just it's a lot of getting ready for the future. You know, my wife and I are looking at different looking at a couple places to potentially relocate to once this is done. And yeah, just that's just, you know, painting, making. I'm exploring augmented reality quite a bit. So yeah. So yeah, just
I'm excited.
Just doing it, you know.
I wanted to say one more thing, because you mentioned the residency rejections, and there is a beautiful article out there, Aim for 100 Rejections, where the author says that, you know, don't be frustrated if you get rejected, but see it as, turn it into the opposite, like see it as one more rejection that you need to get to the 100, because until then your visibility will have grown, your frustration will be inherently less, because you cannot take each of these 100 rejections seriously, and you will get somewhere. And I mean, I think it's kind of impossible to aim for 100. I mean, over the years, yes, within a year, I think it's not, what the hell, I mean, I have to get work done, but but this mindset, I love it. It's good.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think And I think honestly, any writing practice you get where you have to write about your work is important. You know, the more you write about your work, the more you think about your work, the more you, or at least for me, the more I uncover new things. Like I think a lot of visual artists aren't often, if unless they're intentionally doing it, they're just not focused or not focused. They're not forced to write about their work enough. And I think a lot of good things come from writing about your work.
Yeah.
So I think those applications give you, you know, give you that place where, you know, you
Very
can kind
true.
of, yeah. So it's good.
Actually, I started a document just last week for a specific project where I went through all the different descriptions that I wrote for exhibitions that I had over the last 10 years. And I didn't find all of the descriptions, but I found a lot of them. And it's beautiful because it says the same thing in whatever, 15 different, so only for solo shows, but it says the same things in, I don't know, maybe 15 different ways. And the focus was this one, and then the highlight shown in that direction. I don't know. It was really interesting to see that. And yeah, it made it come alive again somehow.
There's a question.
Student loan. I think it's more a comment.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's Mo. I got you. Okay. Cool.
Well,
yeah. Good.
Matthew, shall we leave it here?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was cool. I hope the information travels to somebody and somebody gets use of it. So.
No, I will tell my students for sure. Let's see. It's very, yeah, maybe that is an okay way to end this. Patreon is extremely easy to set up. I think it's done probably in 15 to 30 minutes. I think 30 minutes if you have no clue about it at all. Basically, you write about yourself. You can do this in a very short way. You can do it in a very long way. You usually set up different tiers, as we discussed here. You do not need to use the tiers because usually the tiers are there for are used so that you can set up different things that people get. But if it's used in the way that Matthew implemented already and proposed now, then you just note at the end of each month how much each person donated and you keep track of it. So there's no specific need for tiers, and that takes a lot of mental power away. You don't need to invest into the benefits that people get, and that's why I think it's set up pretty quickly. Yeah, and then you just need to spend the money.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. And yeah, you can also edit your Patreon page, account, whatever. So like you can start it, just, you know, throw a couple sentences up there, and then as time goes on, you know, you can adjust things.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. Well, hey, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, and everyone, thanks for tuning in. See you soon. Bye.
Grüß.